When the novel for Kamen Rider Revice, penned by the show's main writer, came out earlier this year to widespread praise, it restarted a conversation about the show's production and all the hell it went through. I looked back through my translation of the producer's symposium from 2024 to see if that had any insight into what happened behind the scenes, and I was kind of shocked to find out how much information I had overlooked the first time. This is a transcript of an interview with all three of Toei's producers for Kamen Rider Revice. It was released on the paid subscription app Toei Tokusatsu Fan Club after the show's finale aired. It has many references to TTFC exclusive content because of that, but I'll try not to linger on them. I'll be reading through the whole thing and adding commentary and context as we go, trying not to get too mad. Enjoy the show! Kamen Rider Revice is the third entry in the Kamen Rider series since the Reiwa era began. This work, with the two thematic pillars of Devils and Family, broadcast its 50th and final episode on August 28th. The baton will be passed over to a new program, Kamen Rider Geats, starting in September. For the Kamen Riders of the Reiwa era, there is a strong enemy that differs from Shocker or Foundation X. As we all know, this enemy is called coronavirus. All of us in the filming staff, and thus the people in the cast, are releasing not only all 50 episodes of the TV series, but also the movies and the series of many spin-off dramas and on TTFC, all while battling this troublesome opponent. The Kamen Rider series is a television program at its core, but even more so, its components are in part influenced by the various societal conditions, not just COVID, of the time as well. In addition, plans and assumptions were changed as those effects progressed in tandem with the broadcast. That's a really weird line to translate. It can be said that that's a characteristic of a Fork War, which is 1 year drama, which are hard to come by nowadays. In summary, what kind of journey has Kamen Rider Revice taken to reach this single goal of TV series completion? And just after having conducted the interview, as Toei Producers Team Special Symposium will be distributed like the years before with super hot timing. Here are the descriptions of the attendees. Taku Mochizuki, Chief Producer, has been involved with Toei Tokusatsu Works as an assistant producer since Kamen Rider Double. Was promoted to producer during the making of Kamen Rider Gaim. Later, he worked as chief producer for the first time in Uchu Sentai Q Ranger. Other important works that he's been in charge of include Detective Zero, Machine Sentai Kira Major, and Ten Gokaiger. Ryosuke Momose, assistant producer. After being involved in all sorts of event planning and production tasks with Toei's business promotion department, he was transferred into the TV planning department in June of 2019. Following Kamen Rider 01, he also participated in this work as an assistant producer. Other than that, he served as producer for the Amazon original Game of Spy, which was distributed worldwide starting on August 1st, 2022. A guest character called Ryunosuke Momose, played by Akiyoshi Nakao, appears in Kamen Rider Beyond Generations. Chika Chikamatsu, assistant producer. Applied for Toei's Tokusatsu program producer recruitment and joined the company in 2019. Kamen Rider 01 is the first work that she worked on. She has worked as assistant producer in Ten Gokaiger, Kamen Rider O's 10th The Core Medals of Destiny, and others. Interviewer. TTFC, Toei Tokusatsu Fanbook Department. Act 1. It ended, but it isn't over? TTFC. You've successfully wrapped up filming of the TV series, and you're drawing nearer to completion, but you're still very busy. Thank you very much for sparing your time with all that going on. To put it bluntly, how are you all feeling about it right now? Mochizuki. Well, it still doesn't feel like it's ended at all. Momose. I feel the same way. Mochizuki. Though, as work on the TV show itself ends, I do feel different. A sense of liberation. Because we were releasing episodes almost every week, we had to make it to the end without causing trouble. Trouble, in this case, meaning a delay in the release schedule, but it's normal to worry about stuff regarding that. Anyway, we have managed to safely release all 50 episodes. It's difficult to say what exactly qualifies as safety, but I'm more or less relieved. Mochizuki is likely referring to anxieties about COVID and potential delays that could be caused by a main cast character getting infected or a shutdown happening. However, there are many other things that could have caused a delay in production but didn't, as we'll see later. TTFC. By the way, it's the first to have 50 episodes as a TV series since Kamen Rider Ghost. The normal year is generally 49 episodes. Kamen Rider 01 also had a 51-week release schedule, but that was when they had to do clip show episodes to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, when you say it doesn't feel like it's ended, you mean that the work and planning is still happening, don't you? Momose. That's right. To talk about the things that have already been announced, there is the final stage and program cast talk show, going on in Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka from September until October. We're preparing for the winter movie as well. After that is the Vista next, and then TTFC's Farm Fresh Theater Episode 2 is being announced. As for anything else, well, there are still things I can't say. TTFC. I see. Mochizuki. The sequence of plans I just stated are events that have become certain traditions. For the other projects, though, I am incredibly thankful that people wanted to do things with Kamen Rider Revice even after it ended. We can never stop moving or take a break, but there are things that make us have a scream of joy. TTFC. We've released 3 works for Revice on TTFC only: Revice Legacy Kamen Rider Veil, Birth of Chimera, and Kamen Rider Jan and Aguilera with Girls Remix. All of them were huge successes thanks to you. Mochizuki. Thank you very much. Birth of Chimera originated as a proposal from director Sakamoto, and the gap between its beginning and the release was fairly small. He's saying that it was rushed. TTFC. Girls Remix was actually filmed before Birth of Chimera. Birth of Chimera was a really unexpected project, but the characters who were charming even in the original story of movie Kamen Rider Revice Battle Familia were depicted more deeply, and that was very good. The other 2 works are that way too, but it's just such an extravagant spin-off work. Mochizuki. Kamen Rider Revice was already an irregularity to begin with in that we had to shoot the winter movie, even if it was a short film, before the show was broadcast. From when it was formally decided at the start of spring, we started auditions, geared up for a lot of problems, and moved it forward at a quick pace. We started filming with no time to breathe. Then the winter movie, Beyond Generations, immediately came along. Kamen Rider Revice The Mystery for Telasa, Televi-kun Hyper Battle DVD with Shogun that was filmed for Toei Video's Blu-ray collection, and Dear Gaga, where Hiromi Kadota and his mother starred. It was a state of affairs where some other work other than the TV series was usually happening. I don't know why I translated it that way. Luckily, each work got a positive reception, and we really felt like the cast and the work was growing in popularity. But even so, we were careful not to bring forth clusters. I'm pretty sure he's, again, talking about COVID and trying not to get people infected here. Momose. Just last year, from the point Revice began filming until the beginning of fall, the so-called 5th wave came. The Delta strain appeared, and in Tokyo alone, there were close to 6,000 people reporting to hospitals at many times. If we're just talking about the amount of people, it was much more than when I was doing 01. However, their movement won't stop even if a state of emergency is declared. It's obvious, but the risk of infection itself will rise. Mochizuki. The proportion of the population that is hospitalized is dramatically different from the beginning, so no matter how careful you are to protect yourself, there's no way to entirely prevent infection. So, in order to prevent impact on filming and the program itself, we prepared many countermeasures for any possible outbreak of infection. As a result, we still made it here somehow, even though many things happened. We've made it to the finale. We made it through the days where the schedules and scenes were modified and didn't stop long filming sessions. That's thanks to the staff and cast themselves knowing that they're irreplaceable and living their lives with pride. Of course, it isn't completely over yet, so I still can't relax, but I'm glad just to be free from worrying about having to check every morning for reports that so-and-so isn't feeling well or this person has a fever. I believe Sakura's actor did get infected with COVID at one point during Revice, but it didn't break out. Momose. Speaking of, the cast has also been saying it doesn't feel like it's over at all. We had the campaign for Battle Familia and preparations for the final stage and program talk show. If you also include shooting the winter movie and the stage show after that, there are still Revice-related things going on constantly, at least within this year. Even though we say it's 1 year long, Kamen Rider is really a 1.5 year long thing. It was probably a very intense 1.5 years for them too. Mochizuki. What was a little different of a situation from the previous work, Kamen Rider Saber, is the state of emergency being declared while Saber was being planned out, and they feared the worst, asking, honestly, how do we film this while we can't film? They gathered plans while trying to avoid as many risks as humanly possible and got through it wonderfully to pass the baton over to Revice. On the other hand, in Revice's situation, we predicted that the situation would at least be somewhat better than during Saber, and we were moving along thinking that at some point we might return to how things were filmed before COVID. I think it was naive of us to have that idea. Generally, when I write "we" in my translations of these interviews, there was no pronoun given in the original Japanese text. Given that this is Mochizuki, the chief producer for the show, talking right now, he's probably referring to his own decisions right now, but this is pretty presumptive of me to say. TTFC, but that's because the experts and most of the world thought that way at the time. Besides, if there were too many restraints anyway, it would be really hard to film. Mochizuki, that's true. So we started out with more degrees of freedom than Saber did, but then we ran into the so-called fifth wave. When that happened, we couldn't do anything besides adjust what we could in the next few episodes' scripts. For example, we actually wanted to do more world-fixing writer guest episodes in the second half of the season too, like episode 5 where Kikuwa Hayashita was appearing, and episode 6 where Kudo, played by Gaman Kai, made his first appearance. However, with filming efficiency in the COVID-19 pandemic being much worse than usual for a long time, we ended up wasting time and money and couldn't get them to come back as a regular no matter what. Nevertheless, we intended to keep writing stories that included guest actors after that as much as we could. TDFC. The impact of episodes like Kuki Kaidan, episodes 22 and 23, or the Voice Actor Festival, episodes 30 and 31, where Subaru Kimura and company appeared, was strong, so it kind of feels like there's an impression that there aren't many guest episodes. Outside of the third core set of 3 months / 13 episodes of the show, of course, there weren't many guest characters that appeared. Mochizuki. That area is an idea that I'm not sure about the pronoun there, but I think it's him specifically, communicated my intent for when script making. I intentionally made the number of supports, filming locations and situations, spoken of in the script very small. In summary, we aimed to optimize the filming by increasing the scenes that could be shot at the same location. Hateki Noshita showed understanding of those limitations, and it was very good that he always handled them ahead of time. For the script, every possible request came from every possible direction, but he was extremely helpful for having the stance of please say everything you want. Personally, I just wish I could have changed the circumstances a little more so that he could perfectly demonstrate his style. This is the first mention of the show's head writer, Hanta Kinoshita, and the first indication that he had a terrible time with the show. He was constantly getting requests to change things, and Mochizuki severely limited his creative freedom. Don't get me wrong, the reason Mochizuki gives here is extremely understandable. For the cores other than the third one, from an early stage, we wanted to be able to switch to episodes with just the regular sets from Hapispa, Phoenix, and Weekend, if the works happened. It was really unfortunate for the shoots where a large amount of people was needed, but it could have been necessary. Outside of the third core, we ended up going in a slightly different direction than what we assumed. That's why things like Director Akamichi's speech scene and episode 35 were ones that we'd originally wanted to have more extras appear in, but we told director Hidenori Ishida that it couldn't be done, and he was able to create a feeling of scale in a different way. TTFC. From us at TTFC, we're also very sorry that we haven't been able to do extra recruitment in these last few years. Like Farm First Theater, we try to do different approaches, extras being involved virtually, but still, the many chances for our members to gather are precious moments for us as well, so I think we would like to resume that whenever we can. Mochizuki. Chikamatsu, remind me, at what point did you start helping with this work? Chikamatsu. I was doing the Core Medals of Destiny and started when that had finished filming. I was just a viewer until maybe episode 5. It was October 4th when I first came to a filming site. Mochizuki. I remember that well. Chikamatsu. I think it felt to the cast members like I had come to the sets for Beyond Generations as much as possible. What was impactful at the start was that at the viewer stage, when I talked with the storyboard artist Soa Ito, I asked for all the spoilers that hadn't been revealed yet. It started with, this Daiji isn't Daiji, he's actually a demon called Kakuro. Then, Commander Wakabayashi is actually dead. Then, all of the hobby spa's regulars are spies. There were also other plans that got changed afterwards, but I knew hidden secrets in many ways, and that was shocking. I was like, what I'm seeing now is all a lie. I started there and then began attending scriptwriting meetings with the one for episodes 17 and 18, which were broadcast at the beginning of the year. I was first credited as an assistant producer in episode 13. In episodes 11 and 12 of Revice, Masataka Sasatani is listed as an assistant producer instead of AP Chikamatsu. Before then, Momose is the only one credited. In November 2021, around when episode 10 aired, an anonymous female assistant producer for Revice went public with a lawsuit against Toei for the poor working conditions she experienced while working on the show. She took leave in June of the same year, citing adjustment disorder as the reason. In her letter to the public, she described Toei forcing her to work unpaid overtime and overworking her. She also said that she was sexually harassed by 2 freelance staff members. Toei failed to do anything to stop this, and when she complained to the producer of Revice, who was likely Mochizuki, he told her, "I'm glad you've become popular so quickly." It should go without saying that this was completely unacceptable. As of October 2025, 4 years after the lawsuit began, the same former assistant producer is still trying to fight for better conditions, receiving little response from Toei. This story has forgotten after all the time that's passed, but it hasn't ended. AP Chikamatsu was likely brought in late because of the lawsuit. I hope she didn't face the same mistreatment, but given that she hasn't been credited in any work since Revice's spin-offs, I don't think things went well. Act 2. Unique Ways of Living and Conveying Emotions. TGFC. In this roundtable discussion, you're trying to talk about things that changed from the original plan as the show progressed as much as you can, but how did that turn out in Revice? Mochizuki. I'm continuing what we talked about before, but with regards to the outline of Weekend after they originally entered the picture, we wanted to progress it as a 3-party war a little more. There's Phoenix, which aims to realize peace against the threat called GIF, Weekend, which seeks freedom, and Iki, who lies somewhere between. That's what was supposed to be shown, but there were parts of the depiction that we were forced to give up on because of limitations with the budget and schedule. Furthermore, we should have made it more apparent that Weekend wasn't a resistance organization, but that would be poor timing because of the war happening in the real world. The action also needed to have more consideration put into it about how we should depict themes of war in a TV show. It was really hard to decide whether the characters will choose peace or gain freedom after they've won. Of course, we always wanted to do the best we could, but this was a tough decision to make. This blew my mind when I was translating it back in 2024. For my best guess, Mochizuki is talking about the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. This adds a lot of interesting context to the conflict of the show. It was meant to be much less black and white, but Mochizuki seems to have been nervous about whether that would make it look like they were both siding a real-life conflict with a pretty clear bad guy. And because they didn't have the money for it? Okay, I'm not sure about that. Momose. On Kinoshita's part, making interesting plot twists is something he's especially good at, and he was trying to make use of that to the best of his ability. Like Mako Kamaki's arc in the Kuki Kaidan episodes we were just talking about, and Subaru in the voice actor episode. Mochizuki. Kinoshita's style fits very well with 2-episode arcs. To speak of the old days, a Kamen Rider Double-like format with basically a detective drama-esque case style. On the other hand, episodes with a hero's first transformation or power-up are difficult to fit into that. And there are also situations where it's good to depict a hero's coolness in a straightforward way. So here he's saying that Kinoshita's writing style doesn't allow enough room for form debuts. This allows for some insight into Mochizuki's actions. He is here to make sure this show makes money, and Kinoshita does not care about that. Kinoshita is a novelist by trade. This was the first TV show he ever wrote for, and he was not accustomed at all to what that required, much less what was expected of a writer of a tokusatsu show. So now, Mochizuki is throwing shade at him while ignoring the fact that Double has some of the most iconic form debuts in the franchise. Still, in Revice, we intentionally did things in ways that reversed the audience's expectations, or disturbed the traditions that, if it's going this way, it'll always end up that way. The moments where we make you think that Tamaki will transform and then Natsuki transforms, or where Iki takes Giffard Rex away while it's being developed, are obvious ones. TTFC. It was also surprising when Giff was defeated in episode 46. Mochizuki. This was also the plan from the start. We adjusted many episodes after the final episode count was decided, but at least we didn't make any big changes. Giff is more of a direct threat than indirect, like a nuclear weapon in the real world. It's a being with a certain deterrence. Towards that, I wanted to show the parts of how humanity and the Igarashi family handles that. Since they ultimately decided to defeat him, after that it's the question of how humanity's future will progress. I was thinking that it's important as a hero to decide how you'll defeat Giff, but that itself is also a different story, and that is not the peak of Revice's story. That's why the last 4 episodes, which are episodes 47 to 50, were actually one thing we wanted to do. This one is tough because of how contextual the Japanese language is. The only pronoun that Mochizuki explicitly uses in this entire paragraph is the we at the end. Because of that, I'm not sure how much of what he's talking about was what he wanted and how much was what the entire team was intending. Momose. I like The Boys, which is on Amazon Prime. Heroes with a lot of different views appear there, and I thought it was good that each character's turmoil and anguish was depicted. I also felt that interest in Revice, especially for its last 4 episodes. I haven't watched The Boys, but knowing that an assistant producer was inspired by it is weirdly funny to me. If this adds any context to the show, please let me know in the comments. Mochizuki. What was established at the foundation of Revice was a conversation with oneself in the form of a devil, though naturally it became a drama which shows each character's way of life. For example, Hiromi is consistently an average man who fights fiercely, and for Aguilera/Hana Natsuki, her theme goes from finding where you belong in yourself to atonement. It's a child-oriented show at its core, so we obviously pour energy into the parts where the heroes fight in cool ways and defeat enemies, but on the other hand, we want to convey something that isn't just that. Chikamatsu. I think that was truly stuck with until the end. Mochizuki, you made sure to properly communicate with the cast at all times. The cast members also took the messages in the script in their own ways, and always strived to express them. I felt how good that openness was, even from my own standpoint. Mochizuki. They knew about everything in the general outline, including the idea of having a story between Iki and Vice at the very end. As for things that got changed, one of those is the number of Kamen Riders in the show. Kamen Riders Aguilera, The Stream, and Juga weren't in the plan at the beginning at all. TTFC. Were those additions due to the popularity of those characters? Mochizuki. That's a factor. Unpredictability is part of the appeal of a long-running work that is broadcast over the course of a year, and it's good that they became developments that properly support the main characters. We also thoroughly discussed whether each character would live or die, but ultimately none of them died besides Ortega. I think this point is different from where you just decide they'll keep appearing if they're popular, and inversely, we're not just prioritizing the circumstances of the play and making them leave. It's the result of us looking at the whole story one time and having the story go in the way that is organically moving. I wonder even now how it would develop if we decided to disrupt that path and have someone die. We didn't want to make it feel like anything goes, though, so Hiromi's transformation after returning to the warfront was squeezed into episode 44, the same one where Daichi is stopped. Hiromi fights in the movie Battlefamilia and the spin-off Birth of Chimera as well, but he doesn't transform. Now, there are opinions that we're doing Sakura and Hana, the girls' team, because people want that. But we'd always aimed to properly make a drama that depicts a relationship between a good heroine and an evil heroine from the start, so I don't believe it was changed very much. I believe I heard a while back that Kinoshita briefly pitched having a female protagonist when Revice was beginning development, which immediately got him laughed at. I don't remember if that's true or not, but having a good heroine and an evil heroine might have been a remnant of that. Anyway, this is another indication that Mochizuki and Kinoshita butted heads, this time over whether to kill off characters for plot value, or to keep them as a writer for money. Mochizuki listed 3 writers, Aguilera, Destream, and Juga, who weren't in the original plans. As wild as the number is, I can't say I'm surprised to hear any of those 3 names. TTFC. I feel it depends on the impact and timing, or maybe in the impressions of the cast's acting, for the episodes where a given character is focused on. Mochizuki. The way we write the screenplays is naturally to first polish the themes and structure of each core, but in the Kamen Rider series, the normal way of doing it is to have 2-episode arcs, and to have one director shoot 2 episodes at the same time. That itself is a system that hasn't changed in the past, but of course, during the COVID pandemic, we had to increase the efficiency of filming due to schedule and budget constraints. So, we properly decided the themes and central characters of the 2-episode arcs more precisely than usual, and tried to make it in a way where each arc finishes production before the next one starts. I personally prefer this approach, and I'm good at it, but this way of doing it has a high affinity for guest episodes that are 2-episode arcs, and inversely, it's difficult to balance while you're also progressing the plot. Perhaps some viewers may have had an impression that the continuity was broken in some episodes because we made it this way. At any rate, this method also has dilemmas where it couldn't be controlled to one's liking if we weren't moving along the shoot smoothly. I would like to learn from this experience and grow from it in the future. Oops, I made the writing quality of the show worse because I preferred a production flow that just straight up didn't work during COVID. Mochizuki, 2022. Act 3. The cast's overflowing zeal and the meaning hidden between the lines. TTFC. Speaking of characters' stories, I think you should talk about the charm of all the people in the acting department of Revice. Speaking frankly, there was a balanced range of ages, and each person's characteristics were different. It's a happy blend of people, and it felt like an incredible team. Mochizuki. That's right. One theme of Revice was family, so firstly, we'll start with the lovely duo of Shigeyuki Totsugi, Gento Igarashi, and Kurara Emi, Yukimi Igarashi, for the Igarashi family, and Kazuya Tanabe, Commander Wakabayashi, for Phoenix, and Jun Hashimoto, Akeishi, and Sayaka Fujioka, Akemi Mikoshiba, after that. Along with Toshihiro Yashiba, Hikaru's dad, and Weekend, it was important that the big places were all tied together by experienced actors. I regret that we couldn't do an episode where Busan got a lot of things to do. It might have been sudden for the viewers who don't watch Kamen Rider Revice, so I tearfully gave up on it. Momose. But Busan's actor, Yukata Saigo, was also good. He got cooler with each episode. Mochizuki. I think that for the young cast members throughout the year, it wasn't a simple script to follow whatsoever. It's unpleasant for the characters to explain their essential feelings and changes in all their lines, after all. Naturally, the minimum amount of exposure is essential, but at the start, many of them thought that this was a work with excessive amounts of explanation. So, Kinoshita intentionally left more blank space in his writing style for Revice. Yeah, it makes sense that a novelist would have to change this when writing for a TV show. For the cast, they were thinking about how they, in their own way, could fill in the between-the-lines parts which weren't written in the script. The people who excellently personified that were all of the veteran actors. I think that the young people were encouraged by closely watching the lines they created. It became a good experience for Wataru Hyuga, who played Daiji and Kagero, who had many chances to work with Jun Hashimoto in the middle part of the series, and others. Momose. Even just playing Daiji and Kagero, 2 very different characters, was challenging, but I think it was great that Hyuga seemed to enjoy taking up the challenge. Maeda, Kentaro Maeda, Iki's actor, became gradually more dependable and more of a leader without even knowing it. I think a characteristic of all the male members is actively working on communication, not only with Mochizuki, but also myself and all the directors. The female members are a little different. It seems like the female cast members often consulted with each other, but for Ayaka Imoto, who played Sakura, and Yui Asakura, who played Hana, they delved into their own characters with their own individual approaches. People like Asakura aren't the type to be very open about things like that, but when I listened to her answers in an interview, I understood that she's deeply thinking about her acting more than I could imagine. It was interesting that she showed the differences between her personality and her role. Yeah, so Hana's actress might have kept to herself on set because another controversy happened during this show's production. She was stalked by a co-star, and the only thing her agency did about it was handling it so badly that she quit. Luckily, she found a new agency and is still active, now under the stage name Hikari Kabashima. TGFC. I definitely felt that in interviews too, that everyone was very sincerely tackling their roles with their own stances. Mochizuki. Personally, even looking back on the works that I participated in as an assistant producer, I'm the type to actively communicate with the cast members. I guess being close in age at the time factored into that, but I tried to be someone who's simply easy to talk to. Even after becoming a chief producer, I'm trying not to let that part of me change. I think that has good results in that the filming sets of Revice were comfortable, but of course that alone isn't enough, so it's natural to also have to be strict. I also say it when I say it, but normally all the directors are firm about the places where they should clean up. What? Say it when I say it? What? What was I on? And like I said just now, the adult cast members were always serious. If you see how they carry themselves in their acting, their feelings should immediately become clear. So I always thought that we shouldn't write scripts where everyone's feelings are plainly written. In that sense, I think they were useful. TTFC. I wondered how something like the end of episode 40 could be shown on a Sunday morning. Mochizuki. Jun Hashimoto wrote about it in his personal blog, so eager fans already know what happened at the filming set, but I was also there that day too, but at the start, Ushijima's actor Yashiba, who again plays Hikaru's dad, kept his distance from Hashimoto and only thought about the parts closely relevant to him. Furthermore, as said earlier, Yashiba had already wanted to co-star with Hashimoto, so this was the day where a wish of his came true. So, Yashiba was already very enthusiastic, and although he made different movements in that scene's performance than in rehearsal, it was more like his body decided to move on its own. In short, he got in the zone. But because Hashimoto's suit was covered in sticky blood, we already couldn't turn back. From there, it's what you all saw, a duel between Hashimoto and Yashiba as fellow actors. While we couldn't redo the take, the two of them gave a great performance, and it became that scene. Akaishi plopping himself down at the end was also an ad-lib, and then his foot fell asleep. Momose. No one else could have acted that scene that way but Hashimoto and Yashiba. They made it an incredible moment. TGFC. By the way, it's weird for me to ask this right now, but how did the name Weekend originate? Mochizuki. It was Honta's idea for a name, which we then adopted. I believe it's from the mental image of people who are normally working adults or students on weekdays, but gather and operate mainly on weekends, since it's an organization mostly made up of regular citizens. Something like weekend spies, I guess. The Ushijima household isn't a real family, but he wanted to have a little more time to focus on them. It was already talked about, but we wanted to make the scale and strength of Weekend as a large organization but more apparent, and there was a blueprint related to that which the Ushijima family depicted. However, the more we would have depicted that, the more gruesome the horror in the last part of the story would become. No matter how it turned out, the organization would always be mentally associated with war, so it became a bit more difficult given the world events happening at the beginning of the year. I'm sure it wouldn't have been in poor taste in the anti-vax plot line in the show. Remember that? Where the government mandated everyone to get stamped and it was bad? Producer Mochizuki, why was that a thing? Okay, I'm letting my temper get the best of me. Look, dude, Hikaru's fake parents get killed off anyway, right? So all this did was flatten out the characters of the Ushijima family and make those moments feel way more forced. Great job, guys. TGFC. The regular characters, George Karizaki and Hiromi Kadata, are also ones that draw attention to themselves. Mochizuki. Noritaka Hamao, George's actor, became a facilitator within the young cast members. I think he himself had a great power to understand and imagine his role, but he also paid attention to the people around him and could take care of them. That also meant that he gets very frustrated if one mistake is made, but the great thing is that he can change how he interacts with others in a positive way. He can also play the leading role with Maeda, and he subtly changes his attitude when he talks with him, or the female characters like Imota or Asakura. So the two of them trusted him too. When Hamao went to his absolute limits, Junya Komatsu's, Hiromi's actor, would quickly follow up. Their exquisite relationship was also good for the team. Komatsu plays the role of the Urumawashi, guy who makes sure everyone has a chance to speak, as they call it in talk shows. Act 4. Many Devils, Everyone's Good Points. TTFC. I'd like to ask about Revice's themes of devils and family. I had the impression that you had a fair amount of freedom when coming up with the devils in Revice and weren't held back by any pre-existing conceptions. I also found incredibly interesting representations in the script for the Visa Next, which I've read ahead of time, but when I see the devils in the TV series it's based on, I really feel like I get it. Mochizuki. The devils depicted in Revice aren't beings who possess humans externally. They're beings who originally exist within someone and then materialize externally. In short, a projection of oneself. So, the humans' personalities and development are clearly reflected in their devils. The way their own devils developed, their motives, and their visual styles should be linked to the characters themselves. The Igarashi siblings Ikki, Daiji, and Sakura are very different from each other, and this is what makes them unique in their own ways. Daiji's devil Kagero is probably the easiest concept to understand. Kagero formed inside Daiji from the trauma he was repressing. For Sakura, it's even more so related to trauma. Love Cove is a weak little creature symbolic of her real self that she was unconsciously concealing. So with Sakura, letting Love Cove be visible is also a moment of growth in itself. She was able to face her weakness and overcome it. But what was different in Sakura's and Love Cove's relationship compared to Ikki and Vice, or Daiji and Kagero, is that you couldn't say they were equals. Ikki and Daiji depicted growth by communicating with their devils, but in Love Cove's case, she couldn't have that conversation, and that's connected to how the Invincible Jan arc near the end was depicted. I pronounced John wrong, but I'm not redoing that entire sentence. In this, Love Cove, as something that only exists for Sakura to protect, disappeared. Daiji and Kagero seem to have a lifelong contract, according to their lines in the finale, but Love Cove is, frankly speaking, being close to an imaginary friend, so there might be a future where she disappears one day as Sakura grows up. It's only a matter of time before she naturally separates from Love Cove as she gradually becomes a more normal person. That'll probably be depicted in a later spin-off. No idea how much of this is Mochizuki's interpretation and how much is Kinoshita's intention. Either way, it differs pretty greatly from the text, which is strange to me. TTFC. So maybe there will be a day where she's become an adult and a mother, and they reunite at an unexpected moment. Mochizuki. Protecting someone important to... I want her to appear in a cool way like Yukimi's devil. Well, in Yukimi's case, it was less like a devil and more like an angel. TTFC. But the preconceived notion of the word devil will follow it around regardless. It's cliche, but I think I had to unlearn my previous idea of a devil when I tried to understand the devils in the world of Revice. Mochizuki. That's right. Of course, there are alternatives to the word devil, and I think that's supported by what seems like coinage of gift blanks in the world of Revice. However, the part of the premise was that the protagonist signs a contract with the devil and the two of them become Kamen Riders together. That in itself was Revice's unique trait, which hadn't been in the Kamen Rider series up to now, so for Ikki and Vice's relationship, it's made clear at an early stage, specifically episode 2. We wanted kids to think these two were interesting or likable, so we had Ikki reject Vice as a partner ahead of time as to not contort their relationship. Of course, there were also things that pushed it along as a thrilling relationship where they're always vigilant, like Eiji, Hino, and Ankh in Kamen Rider O's. Because no matter what you say, Vice is a devil. Not knowing when they could get hung in their sleep, that's interesting in its own way. But we can't portray Vice as a human eater or always betraying the humans after that he's become a Kamen Rider, and in the end, we can't distort his motive. That's a big difference between Ankh, who isn't a Kamen Rider, and him. We didn't want to make him too similar to his great senior. I haven't read the Revice novel yet, but I've been told that Vice is more antagonistic in it, which to me suggests that Kinoshita possibly didn't want him to become a cut-and-dry good guy. I should mention that the novel is a bad timeline AAU story, and Vice just might be like that in it because he didn't have the same character development as in the show. It's still worth mentioning, though. TTFC, which is precisely why parts of Daiji and Kagero resemble him so strongly. Mochizuki. In the Kamen Rider series, the age range of our audience is actually very spread out. With Iki and Vice, and afterwards John, we tried to have it appeal to kids first and foremost. On the other hand, we had the goal to make it enjoyable to adults as well, with the drama of Phoenix members like Daiji and Kagero, and also Karisaki and Hiromi. Iki and Vice don't usually have serious fights with each other, but Iki and Daiji having a serious brotherly conflict is also that chases certain reality. What? Okay, I need to retranslate that sometime. I think it's like having a dose of reality, like sibling fights in the real world. I don't know. We decided at a fairly early stage that Iki and Daiji would talk in episodes 3 and 4 after Iki and Vice's relationship was created in episodes 1 and 2. But for Daiji and Kagero, we expected the span between Evil's emergence and Live's creation to take about 5 or 6 episodes. Because of various circumstances, it was stretched out for 10 episodes. What? What are various circumstances here? I've asked around, I haven't gotten any clear answer. It's probably hidden in a production blog somewhere. But yeah, I don't know what various circumstances are here. It's just another thing that had to be quickly changed during production. TTFC. Speaking of Daiji and Kagero, the Live vs. Evil fight in episode 26 were directed by Hidenori Ishida, and the birth of Holy Live afterwards was just too fiery. I thought that was the last time Kagero would be seen. Mochizuki. In terms of the toy sales schedule as well, that was set as the goal for Daiji and Kagero's relationship. I had that belief as well, until we wrote the script. As we thought about Revice's foundation of having a dialogue with the devil inside you, while re-examining the developments that would happen in the endgame, we began thinking about if it was good for Daiji's goal to be without a companion. We discussed it with Bandai and created another arc for him in the final part of the show. I also conveyed that to director Ishida, and he understood my reasoning. Holy Live's debut became a very amazing portrayal, and I'm extremely grateful to the director for that. Shikamatsu. I honestly cried during episode 26. However, when doing script meetings for planning episodes far ahead of time, we agreed that the goal for Daiji certainly wasn't that. Holy Live could have been the end of Daiji's arc. Bro. Mochizuki and Chikamatsu don't give any indication of whose idea it was to end it there and whose was to continue it. The only clue we have is the line about the toy schedule. It's always about the money, Spider-Man. A Gotcha production blog, which has its own can of worms of implications, gives some insight into this process. Turns out that any writers besides the primary don't have any guaranteed extra forms attached to them. The production team has to convince Bandai to make each one of them. So they might have thought that they could just get away with ending at Holy Live and not bother to ask Bandai for any more forms, only to realize that Kinoshita had more planned for the character. The novel also might make the thought behind Kagero's character more evident, though again, I haven't read it yet. It's not clear what exactly happened here. All I can gather is that it was yet another case of a major plot point being very quickly changed, likely due to a misalignment of views. Mochizuki. A part that we had thought about pretty hard was when Daiji would return to the Igarashi family after joining director Akaishi's side. Chikamatsu. Kakeru's return in Evil T Live's creation is a true end goal of Daiji's story. The road to that point was long, but it was a necessary stroke to make. Mochizuki. Speaking of catharsis in the story, I think it would have been beautiful for Daiji to return when Genta became Deathstream in episode 42. But when I thought about it realistically, I realized that this would not be quite right. It's not easy for Daiji to make that decision to simply return because of the actions that his father takes in only 30 seconds. Not even Iki or Genta can save him, but the moment damages Daichi's heart, and it steadily grows more unstable. That sounds a lot like Hiromi's arc. It's a 3-part arc in a pretty long strokes. I'm not going to give any opinions on this, I'll just let you sit with it. This was Mochizuki's idea. Chikamatsu. I think it should have been Hiromi. It's a drama, so you can just say this is what'll happen here, but well, we all try to think about, is this really good as it is? And that's why episode 44 turned out that way. Hyuga kept getting a heavy amount of lines at that time, and it was always difficult for him, but he did his best to meet our expectations. Mochizuki. Even in the middle section of the show, he was burdened with especially important parts, but he did persevere, and Daichi became yet another unique character in a long line of so-called secondary writers. TTFC. How did Karizaki's arc in episodes 47 and 48 come about? Although it does connect to Iki and Vice's final fight. Chikamatsu. That's the episode where everyone saved Kari-chan instead of the other way around. Mochizuki. For Karizaki, even Hiromi, who cared for him the most and was closest to him, couldn't get through to him. So even though Iki's about to lose his memories, he meddles and helps Karizaki. Karizaki holds the moral duty of completely erasing the threat of Gift's genes and defies the Igarashi family, but his true motive was to get revenge against his father. Against that, Iki gives him the information that Masumi Karizaki loved his son, questions Karizaki's thoughts once again, and brings out his true feelings in an all-out battle. This stance of questioning is valuable. Iki, without forcing him to come to a conclusion, simply meddled to the bitter end. In the end, through the help of the nosiest guy in Japan, Karizaki guided himself to the conclusion of confronting his father's feelings. Please appreciate the performance that Maeda and Hamao put on for this episode. I think that Hamao especially showed his love for George Karizaki and Revice in a wonderful form. Mochizuki didn't explain the origin of the arc, he just said what he thought it all meant? Huh? Act 5. Grief of separation, an honorable end to a nosy hero. TTFC. And now for the finale, episodes 49 and 50. In this, for Iki to take back his important memories, Vice does something very profound. Could you talk about how you decided that Iki would gradually lose his memories due to the contract? Mochizuki. I actually wasn't that interested in the idea at first. Previously, I was in charge of the work Detective Zero, which Iki Sawamura starred in. The premise of his character, Detective Tokiya, is that he remembers the necessary things for his daily life outside of work, but he ends up losing all of his memories related to being a detective. This is actually called selective amnesia in real life, but if it's depicted in a drama, it's extremely difficult to draw the line. As the story goes on, you can't fully decide if they'll forget or remember this in a specific situation. And for someone who makes the show and decides on that, it's really difficult to figure out whether you'll make it apparent to the viewers each time. It's an interesting idea, at least in movies and one-shot dramas, but in my personal experience, it hasn't been a very good fit for a serial drama. Of course, it's fiction, so it's good in itself if we make plot points that fit the story, but I thought it would be difficult to continually use that concept throughout a show, and I had concerns about using it. However, after we talked about the climax of Iki and Vice's story, I had the opinion that I want the characters to be tied down as a reason for conflict, and decided that I wanted to keep it in. Producer Mochizuki was not on board with what the emotional peak of the entire show was already planned to be. From the very start. It probably wouldn't have happened if he hadn't changed his mind. I don't think Kinoshita was the one who ruined Revice. TTFC. There was a puzzling image at the end of the first episode that was made to feel like a dark omen. The meaning of that moment was revealed much later on. Mochizuki. I guess we could have given frequent hints from the start, but that would have been too in your face. As a team, we discussed when and how we'd start hinting at it. As a result, the terms of the contract between Iki and Vice were first discussed in episode 25, and the phenomenon of the disappearing memories is concretely depicted in Jiko's arc in episodes 30 and 31. However, Karizaki seeing Iki disappear from a photo in the compilation episode just before then, that was put there to get viewers to remember the plot point, but I regret that it ended up being more confusing instead. This guy can't stop losing! TTFC. Iki isn't forgotten, it feels close to actual amnesia for he himself to forget. Mochizuki. It'd certainly be sad for Iki to forget because everyone else forgot about him, and it's a useful plot point specifically in this kind of work of art, but if you go that way, it's very reminiscent of a previous character in Kamen Rider Den-O named Yuto Sakurai. I knew about Rider when that was airing, even though I hadn't joined Toei yet, so I assumed there would be a lot of other people who would remember that too. They have a very helpful footnote for this. It says, Yuto Sakurai, Kamen Rider Zeronos, was a character who has memories disappear every time he uses cards to transform. Yuto's memories and the memories of people who know him were both erased with every transformation, but in his story, the sadness of being forgotten was more prominent. TTFC. Kentaro Maeda's acting of Iki forgetting his family was impressive. Mochizuki. The way Iki himself forgets about everyone felt very much like Iki in Revice. Okay. Although Japan's biggest meddler had elevated his Nosy, saved a lot of people, and gotten close to saving the world, the price he paid for that was forgetting everything about his family, the most precious thing in his life. However, everyone remembers everything about Iki and the things he'd done for them, so they tried to return the favor somehow for the meddler who's given so much to them. At the end of the end, he is helped because of his companion's nosiness. When that conclusion was seen, I felt Iki being established as another protagonist in the Kamen Rider series with a wonderful identity. Looking back on all of it, we didn't explain everything well, and could have done some things better. For us, we weren't following the past successes and templates, and we chose to challenge ourselves by making something new rather than having a solid basis. So we chose our own path. You did this to yourself! I'm full of thanks for the staff and cast members who carried the same feelings as I did. TGFC. And in the final episode, there's a super big surprise guest. Mochizuki. The unexpected arrival of King Kazu. We got the athlete Kazuyoshi Miura to make an appearance. TTFC. It's established as Iki's yearning to be a pro soccer player. You can validate the posters, signatures, and various merchandise on the set of the Happy Spot, and him coming here in person was the payoff for that foreshadowing. Momose. When we established Iki as a former soccer player at an early stage, we began talking about who would be a good target for his admiration, and wanted to have it be a legend among legends if possible. Toei's office has had a good connection with Yokohama FC, which the player Kazuyoshi Miura belonged to at the time. We presented it to them and asked them to help with the design for the posters and such. I'm very happy that Kazuyoshi Miura excitedly agreed to make this appearance as well. Mochizuki. Momose is someone who can keep trying at something over and over again without hesitation. We're in our mid-30s, and because of my experience and intuition, I felt like giving up before starting the negotiations because I thought it'll probably be too difficult. But Momose isn't like that. He says, "We can do it!" and dives right into it. And then if I do anything, he says, "It's been approved!" Momose. But in hindsight, we began working on the movie rather suddenly, and there were a lot of difficulties when that was started up. Mochizuki. It could be said for any TV series made at the time, but you were truly heroic. From a producer's standpoint, there's no point where there's not a work being produced, and you can flip your switch off. Every week, the day that our work will air approaches. Of course, all the staff members are working on it, and they're still people and can't work all the time, so they make sure to rest. But if something happens even on a break day, we have to deal with it as soon as we can. Even as an AP, you're still looking at it as someone who has say over your range of work, so if we don't keep contact, filming will completely stop. If we continue that, the filming staff will lose trust in us. The period of starting up is something we're trying out for the whole staff. Like, should we follow these guys for the whole year? However, this is a period where we can't work on improving work practices more. Making a tokusatsu series has always been rigorous, so we were already working gradually on improvements before COVID, but due to the pandemic, things started changing more quickly as a whole. I think you can say this about the industry as a whole. The optimization and shortening of filming as a way to prevent disease spread are components of that, and that has improved work practices just as much as it's prevented infection. So he said that they can't improve working conditions right now, and then said that they've improved working conditions right now. Which one is it? Also, this whole bit feels like it's trying to directly counter the allegations made by the assistant producer who sued Toei by saying, "Well, duty calls, you gotta keep the show going," to someone who did not ask for those responsibilities and was not prepared for the work that was expected from her. TGFC. But still, it's the same up until filming. In a weekly airing series, you can't change the fact that goods are delivered throughout the year. Mochizuki. That's true. And if anything, that increased this year. But for this, I thought that people especially needed it in the unique circumstances of the coronavirus pandemic. We had a sense of purpose from this, and we didn't slow down. It's evidence that people are dependent on the potential of the Kamen Rider series in the midst of the trouble everywhere. Moreover, we've seen many individuals leave the industry in these last few years. Not to mention the entry-level and middle-ranking staff members who came in here pursuing their dreams, and even the veterans who have continuously made a living here. All kinds of people have tearfully resigned because the work wasn't making enough to live off of anymore. That's frustrating. There isn't much I can do, but I create things as a producer, and in short, create jobs, so I felt I could give them at least a little bit of hope. Maybe he could take their complaints about sexual harassment seriously? However, with that situation at hand, we can't get many people to join the company, and if that's the case, we'll inevitably need to pick up the pace. Each individual can't do anything besides increase the density of what they get done every day an hour. It became an era where we can't choose either quality or quantity anymore, and both are needed at the same time. That's difficult, but at the present moment, we're just continuing to work hard. In the midst of that, the staff members, directors, and cast showed their fullest capabilities and continued to give their best performance, and I am full of gratitude for them. I think there were a lot of difficulties, but when it was time to wrap up filming and everyone could unanimously say it was a fun year, that made me truly happy. Chikimatsu. I'm different from Mochizuki and Momose because now I feel like I've become pretty different because of my work on Revice. I joined after it had already started production, and I hadn't figured out how much I could contribute to, but when everyone greeted and thanked me, especially the offices of cast members, I felt like I had been of some use to them, and I was filled with happiness and sadness at the same time. It's the second work I've been very involved with since 01, and I feel like my attachment to it grew with each episode. There are things about the end result of the show that I can't say anything objective about, but I'm happy I could be a part of this. Did you just say that she wasn't satisfied with how the show turned out, or am I reading too much into that last sentence? Then they talked about some TGFC specials, and it isn't really consequential, so I skipped over most of it. Mochizuki. I think that, at the point this symposium will be released, Episode 3 of Kamen Rider Jean and Aguilera with Girls Remix still won't be out, so please look forward to that too. This work is director Koichi Sakamoto's greatest desire. For those unfamiliar, director Sakamoto is notorious for camera work that sexualizes female characters, but also for being pretty good at directing scenes between female characters. TTFC. I think that getting 10 heroines from different generations, including the active duty ones, to appear, 11 if you count Hiroe Igata appearing in voice only, was truly an amazing feat that will go down in Kamen Rider history. I was present for the filming of Episode 3's final scene, and an incredible miracle was occurring. It's deeply moving to think that Episode 3 will be released before long. Oh, thank God, I'm getting tired. Speaking of lineages of Toei works, Ayane as Electrowave Human Black Tackle became mother-daughter two-generation Ishinomori heroines with Etsuko Shihomi Bijin, who's a character from the 1973 Gekaider show, and I want that point to also strongly appeal to people. Mochizuki. We put all of our effort into making the TV series, movies, and spin-offs. I'm thankful to the many people who watched Revice for doing so, regardless of what opinions they have. And the story of Revice definitely has yet to end in all sorts of ways, so please keep supporting us from now on. That was a doozy. I apologize for my commentary getting a little opinionated in parts, and also for my voice probably sounding like a frog. Revice has an obscene amount of internal drama attached to it, some of which I didn't even mention, like Tsubara Kimura's racism, but I wanted to make all of the insight hidden in this interview more public knowledge. The silver lining to all of this is that Taka Mochizuki has not appeared in credits for anything since 2024. Rip Bozo. I know my last upload was a while ago. I've been busy with school and stuff, and only just now finally got a laptop of my own that isn't school-owned. If you're wondering why the Gav video's audio was so terrible, it's because I literally couldn't hear it while editing on the device I was using. But I've had a lot of video ideas, the first priority being this. I've also had a script for a ghost video sitting unfinished since September, and hopefully I'll be able to finish that before its 10th anniversary ends. See you next time.